Welcome to another edition and a new season of the MDM podcast. I'm Mike Hockett, MDM's executive editor. In our research of distributors that are leaning into data-driven strategy, scaling through a combination of acquisitive and organic growth, and investing in their people alongside technology, one of the best examples we've seen in recent years is of Rexel, especially its North American unit. Paris, France-based Rexel is a globally leading electrical products and services supplier, with its US and Canada operations ranking number 5 on MDM's 2025 top electrical distributors list, with around $9 billion in annual revenue. That North American unit, representing 45% of the total group's sales in 2024, is led by Roger Little, a career electrical veteran who was CEO of Rexel's Canada operations for 10 years, before being promoted to USA CEO and leader of the US-Canada cluster at the end of 2023. He's my guest in this episode, in which we covered a lot of ground on what Rexel's been up to lately and what's on the horizon. Our conversation covered the company's recent acquisitions, including one that gave it a strong foothold in a relatively new market, why its North American growth has outpaced the group's Europe performance, Rexel's investments in digital and talent development, and of course, his thoughts on tariffs and their impacts on the markets the company serves. Enjoy. Roger, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, and appreciate being on the MDM podcast and giving everybody a little bit of insight into what Rexel's up to.
I'd love to start on the topic of M&A, where Rexel has been very active post-2020. As of June, the company has made 14 acquisitions since 2021, with 8 of them in North America, including 5 in the U.S., and those 5 have added approximately $2.25 billion in added revenue combined. For any company that's making that many acquisitions that frequently, I'm always curious to ask how they manage all those moving parts, especially since the integration of some of those companies is probably happening simultaneously. So how has the team made it work effectively at Rexel North America?
Yeah, it's really thanks to a very dedicated team, actually a relatively small team, but dedicated purely to integration. So a couple of years ago, we put together an integration team for M&A. Their job is not necessarily to do the entire integration, but is to run and manage the integration and then pull in all the various teams, because as you're probably well aware, you have HR, you have IT, you have legal, you have all these different functional teams within Rexel, and ultimately the acquisition target and ultimately the acquisition itself involved. So we rely on that team. That team has a lot of authority. It doesn't report directly to me, but certainly has my attention. We meet once a month to go through anything that's going on within the integrations, from kind of anything 2 years or newer, because there is a bit of a moving target within these integrations that takes some time, depending on how quickly we've integrated them, on how quickly we're doing ERP changes. Maybe there's legal entity changes coming, so that it's sort of 2 years and newer. So we meet once a month, and it's certainly a very important meeting. It has my attention, has the attention of many of my direct reports. And therefore the authority level of that team is well known within the company. When they ask, they typically get a pretty quick response.
One of the company's biggest recent acquisitions was in the spring of 2024 when it added Tally, a Los Angeles-based distributor of networking infrastructure products, and that really ramped up Rexel's offerings in the datacom, telecom, and data center markets, with over $350 million in added revenue from that. Can you take me through the strategy behind that Tally deal and what made it a priority?
When I very first started my role here at Rexel USA, I was sat down with the M&A team and was looking at current deals, post deals, and then deals that just hadn't gone anywhere. And so kind of was going through the file and and saw Tally, and I knew Tally because my time in Canada, we did have some broadband and datacom business in Canada. It's a sizable part of what we do there, and I knew the Tally name, knew it had a lot of a lot of respect within the industry that it serves. And I just asked, what's the status of this one? And the M&A team said, geez, we don't know. It never really went anywhere. Um, and so I asked them to reach back out to Tally and just get an update because, we hadn't seen any announcements. So sure enough, we were told that they had gone through a process and it had not succeeded. So we asked if we could chat with the ownership group, and actually flew two people out there, I think, the next week, started talks again, and within 3 months actually closed the Tally deal. But it was really about getting into that datacom broadband space, something we were quite underweight in the U.S., but as I say, something we have good experience in within the company, especially in North America. So it was good to have a blue chip. Tally's definitely well known in that, especially wireless broadband space. Family business, really well run, sizable to your point, was 350 million at the time of acquisition. But we knew with our footprint we could scale it up as well, which we've been quite successful at doing since then. So turned out to be probably one of the best acquisitions I've ever done in the 10 or 12 that I have done over the past many years, and the growth has been fantastic. Obviously, the 5G timing really helping us there. So,
And of course, it's just a great market to be in as far as where we're seeing electrical momentum out of that datacom, data center, those markets.
exactly.
Great place to be right now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, outside of that, the two most recent acquisitions that the company has recently shared were of, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but it's New Jersey-based Warshauer
right.
Electrical.
Yep.
That was announced in mid-June. That added 5 locations and I think around 180 employees. And then Schwing Electrical announced April 1st, which added half a dozen locations, about 100 employees, and another 70 million in annual revenue. Besides those figures, what can you say about what those two companies brought to Rexel here in the U.S. and Canada?
Putting in some white space on the map, where when I started looking at our M&A, especially in core electrical, which both these companies are core electrical distributors, I looked at where we're kind of underweight or underrepresented. We've certainly got big presence in the Southeast, in the Northwest, but through that New York corridor, we had a lot of white space on the map. So started looking for acquisitions in that space, and not necessarily focused in, New York being such a big market, being very complicated, but really looking around it to see if we couldn't get a footprint around the New York kind of as a base. And obviously, both New Jersey and Long Island came up. Both these companies, family run, quite long histories, both of them, 50 plus years in business, and being run by second generation in a lot of cases. So great targets. Went and spoke with both of them, and actually have successfully landed both of them, but got us a really nice presence in both those markets. I would say very much a market leader in the space they're in, which is core electrical. Very strong technical teams, very strong presence in the market, and both offered something that we like, which is services. They're very service oriented, so not just the core electrical business, but in the case of Warshire, they do everything from generator services to building out custom panel boards and switchboards. So really interesting business. So we're excited to have both of them on board. And both the acquisitions are fairly new, but going very well so far, and give us a nice footprint in those markets. And these are big markets. These are you can imagine being that close to New York, being kind of a bedroom community to New York, and being also big states themselves. It's quite exciting for us.
Yeah, it sounds like both of those still have a lot of elbow room to scale further. And like I said, it's a good market to be in. Well, zooming out a little bit, for at least the past year, Rexel's North American and U.S. sales growth have outpaced the total Rexel Group total sales growth. In Q1 of this year, I think it was Rexel total sales were up 1.4% year over year, but they were up 3.8% in North America, and it was approximately the same story in Q4 of 2024. And I have to assume M&A is driving part of that, but I know it's not the only factor. So can you touch on what's maybe driving some of that outperformance here in the US and Canada versus broader Europe?
Sure. To your point, M&A is part of it, but it's just one half the story, really. I mean, the other half is we've been very focused on core market growth. So, very strategic in the growth within our existing businesses, within the core electrical distribution business, the automation business, and some of the services that we offer. So we've been very intent. We measure and monitor our core business versus the M&A, because sometimes those two things can get lost in one another, and you can fool yourselves into thinking you're doing great, but it's really just you've bolted on a bunch of companies.
Right.
So we do really focus on M&A growth separately from the core market. And why are we doing better than Europe? I think honestly the market in North America is certainly a little more robust, a little stronger. Couldn't have a conversation without especially the U.S. market, without talking about data centers. The explosion of data centers has really helped the U.S. growth. And certainly we're participating in that market. So I think it's just, the market that's available to us. We've gained a little bit of share, and been very focused on our core electrical distribution.
And I think just for context, I believe Rexel's 2024 total sales, I think it was around 45% was North American based. So just throwing that in there for context sake here.
Yep. No, we do. We represent 45, maybe even a hair more than that by the time we're done this year. That's my
Right.
goal. We're approaching the 50% mark of the group now. So
Yep.
it's become a big part of what Rexel is globally.
Well, between 2023 and 2024, Rexel appointed a handful of new U.S. executives, including a new supplier relations leader, a chief digital officer, chief strategy officer, a data strategy and engineering leader, and of course, your promotion as CEO of Rexel USA, alongside Jeff Moyle as CEO of Rexel Canada. And you and Jeff have been with Rexel since 2014 and 2016, so plenty of company experience there. But that's still a lot of people in new executive roles. So, what has it been like to be strategizing amid this relatively new look team of company leaders?
Yeah, and actually, if you take acquisitions into account, I've been really with the organization over 30 years. So it's and that's a bit of the story of Rexel, because we're a company of acquisitions. So a lot of people have pre-existing tenure within a company. That comes in. So like I say, I've been over 30 years. I was CEO of Rexel Canada since. In the mid-teens of 2000. So certainly been in the organization a long time. And really when we started organizing the new structure back, pre-COVID, we went to a regional structure. So we had that time 8 regions. It's now 9. And we didn't have a lot of infrastructure within I'll call it the head office or the corporate office within the U.S. or North America. So we've built that out and made sure we had key positions filled. You named a lot of them, especially around the digital, the IT, and strategy. So those were sort of positions that we lacked. The regional model was well organized, was running very well, but what we wanted to make sure is we had a very cohesive strategy within North America, US and Canada. So we appointed those folks. A lot of them did come from within the business, but we've done a nice mix of bringing in some talent, especially around some of the key topics like strategy. That's something you probably want to bring bring somebody in that's got a real eye on strategy, that's done it before, and that's exactly what we did, bringing in Jordan Loheim. Uh, Likewise, on the digital side, organizing those digital teams, they tie in nicely to my direct reports and myself, but we brought in some real specialists that can help us, move whatever it is in that digital world, whether it be the IT side, the infrastructure side, or now with all the new tools that we're implementing, making sure we're bringing in sort of, best in class talent within that, those topics.
Well, on the digital side and technology, this past May, the company announced it extended its partnership with Parspec, which is an AI-driven company that connects distributors with, I think it's construction products and projects that they can bid on. Can you touch on how Rexel is or plans to leverage that partnership?
Yeah, it's been a great partnership so far. We started about a year ago with Parspec, to your point, on the project side, and really doing pre and post project management through Parspec, using their AI tools, but also just their core functionality of managing, having having the ability to really track a project from kind of cradle to grave. And these are very complex nowadays. They tend to be a long cycle time. Some of them go very quickly, and others take, they're literally 2-year projects. So you want to make sure you've got all that information, it's secured, and we may even have people change through that time. So it's having one depository, one area of information, sort of one source of the truth for both ourselves, but also more importantly for our customers and our vendor partners. So the partnership that we announced allows us to work with Parspec on some of their next generation. You like all of these digital tools, especially AI based. It's evolving every month, and we've been working closely with them for the last year on sort of what we'd like to see in the tool. We've tested some new technology, and we'll continue to do that now through this partnership. So we're quite excited about that partnership, but also others that we've developed and will continue to announce through the months to come.
We'll touch on the digital and AI front in just more in just a bit. I do want to emphasize here talent development, which appears to really be a priority for Rexel, especially over the past few years. The company is an internal learning hub that it calls Skill Up, which from what I've seen contains, I think it's over 2,000 training sessions on strategic topics like digitalization, electrification, and sustainability. The company also has, I think you call it Accelerate, an executive
Correct.
training program. So just what can you share about the company's emphasis on internal talent development and what it's doing for your culture right now?
Yeah, training and product development, but more importantly, the development of our human assets is one of our 4 key pillars within our strategy. So we launched a new strategy back the very end of March this year, and one of those 4 pillars is really the learning and development of our folks, our associates within the business. So we are very focused on the tools to help them, but really just, the business has changed a lot in the last few years. Just knowing your job seems to be not enough anymore. It's almost, we have to be ready for that next job much faster. If you think about, 30 years ago when I started, people would be in role for 1, 2, 3, 5 years before they moved on to the next role. And
Yeah.
we're now moving people through the organization much, much faster than that. And by the way, folks today want to be moved through the organization. They almost expect it now. So having tools and a platform that allow you to develop the team fast, to be able to onboard people, certainly with the retirement of the baby boomers and that we're all facing, we're bringing in more and more people. I just look at the number of people we've brought in since COVID. We basically have, in pure numbers, almost turned over our entire staff since COVID. So and obviously being able to do that effectively and timely is a benefit to us, but also, as I say, to our customers and our vendor partners. So they've been extremely helpful. Our vendor partners have provided an immense amount of content for for our learning platform that we use. They're constantly updating it and monitoring it and helping us where they see opportunity. And then there's just a myriad of courses there, from just general knowledge, things like time management, stress management, and health and wellness, because obviously that's important, that everybody arrives at work, and is safe, and not only safe, but, their mental and physical wellness is important as well. So that's all part of that platform. And something we're quite proud of. I think it's something that differentiates us, and something that our size and scale gives us the ability to do that others may not. So it's something we're really proud of, and it is a global platform. So we have obviously North American content, but there's also some global content in there as well.
Yeah, it's great to hear. It was just something that really stood out to me as I was just poking around the Rexel website and what it promotes on the people side of the business. It was pretty cool. Well, let's look a little more broadly at the electrical market as a whole. And when comparing it to the rest of the distribution industry, electrical has been one of the top performing sectors in terms of revenue and general demand. What are you and Rexel seeing as far as tailwinds here in North America at around the midpoint of 2025 that might have the company positioned for continued growth?
Well, certainly we've touched on data centers. No conversation about the electrical industry isn't complete without data centers. So the explosion there of AI and the requirement for data centers, especially in the US, has been phenomenal. I mean, just the size, the scope of those jobs is unprecedented. So I mean, that has given the entire industry a bit of lift for sure. You've got aging infrastructure of the grid, which has obviously really helped the electrical industry as well. And I think that's got many years of life left in it. The grid isn't getting younger, it's getting older. So it's going to, and power requirements are growing, not shrinking.
Yeah.
But then there's also a lot of new technology. You think of, it wasn't that long ago LEDs were introduced. We're now, hard to believe, but we're actually starting to replace LED projects that we did 8, 9 years ago, even 6 years ago. We're starting to see replacements, and with the many generations later, even more technology, more efficiency in the LED. Automation continues to move forward, so we're seeing a lot of renewing and modernization of automation. Obviously, flexible automation and flexible manufacturing becoming a bigger topic. Current administration pushing for more to be built and manufactured in the U.S. Obviously, great for our automation business and our general electrical business. So there's just a lot of, there's of course the one single big one being data centers, but then there's just a lot of others that are really helping the electrical industry. So I like to say the electrical industry, it's finally our time, right? We're in a great spot. The growth is there, and it's probably, I think in the next decade will continue to be very strong.
Well, there's no way I could avoid asking you about tariffs in this podcast, given that it has been the dominant topic of 2025 and will be the rest of this year. We know that tariffs are impacting distributors of all different sizes and demographics all differently, and it's a situation that's changing on sometimes a daily basis here. Rexel's Q1 earnings presentation noted limited North American impact from tariffs, and that the company, like many others, are closely monitoring price increases in the U.S. on most product categories that range from 4 to 20%. I know that the situation is constantly changing, and it might change by the time that this podcast publishes, but can you give us an update on what you're seeing now as of recording this in mid-July, as far as how Rexel is dealing with tariffs and what kind of impact the pending 50% copper tariff may be likely to have?
Yeah, that's certainly the copper tariff is certainly going to have a major impact. The formerly announced steel and aluminum ones have had I would say a modest impact, probably more so on some of the supply chain sources, not so much pricing. Pricing has been affected in and I would call it a moderate manner, nothing significant. But I do think the copper tariff could have a major impact on. Obviously, if you think about electrical, it's hard not to think copper is almost in everything electrical.
Yeah.
Short of very few things we sell. Again, it's not, doesn't mean even bare copper is a component of labor, transportation, and the actual copper. But certainly, if you think about wire and cable, a huge impact. So probably anywhere from 10 to 50% of the final price is going to be impacted by the COMEX price of copper. And we saw COMEX respond pretty sharply when those first announcements were made last week. And it'll be interesting to see as those dates get closer and as the tariff actually locks in. Does it lock in at that 50%? Is there some sort of reduction or negotiation that happens? But no doubt it's going to have an impact on what the electrical industry does. As far as all the other tariffs, whether it be country-based tariffs or commodity-based tariffs, they have had, as I say, a moderate impact on our pricing. Not as significant as I thought it was going to be in the beginning, but I think there's still a lot of negotiations happening. So there's still deals being signed, almost daily. It seems like as we get closer to the end of July and into August, I think there's some hard deadlines there. So I think we'll start to see more serious pricing impact. So far, as I say, the supply chain has not been impacted in any significant fashion. We haven't seen any shortages, which is good because obviously a lot of us have those scars from COVID and are just trying to heal them up. So I think it's good that it hasn't been a supply chain issue. It's been mostly just pricing that we've seen.
Yeah. Well, getting back to digital and technology, Rexel has consistently promoted its digital advancement, presenting its Accelerate 2028 strategy at the company's 2024 Capital Markets Day event. I think that was about a year ago at this time. And that event really noted some key initiatives that focus on digital and AI. I know that growing digital sales is a priority there, as is investing more in AI. So can you touch on both of those fronts, maybe starting with the growing digital sales front and then leveraging AI? And I know that both of those probably go hand in hand.
Yeah, they really have become in the last 12 months, I think AI and digital have almost become intermingled. They were quite separate, but now we're seeing almost every digital platform we use be AI based or have a component of AI involved in it. But maybe as those, to your question, I'll kind of separate them to start with. Our digital sales is really not about forcing customers to transact digitally. It's really about having platforms so that customers can transact in any manner they wish to. If they wish to do it through a website, if they wish to do it through an app, if they wish to do it through EDI or some sort of B2B system to system, ERP to ERP system, making sure we have that available. And I'm happy to say we've got all of those available. We haven't, kind of crossed a bridge that we haven't seen the other side of. So I'm happy that we've got those systems. Those systems cost, a lot of money and time to develop. So we feel we're in a great spot there. But if a customer still wants to come to the counter, if a customer still wants to pick up the phone and call an inside resource, that person's there, and it's really a live person. It's not a chat bot. It's not an answering machine. It's a real person. So we'll transact however customers want to transact, but we are seeing, depending on the market, depending on the type of customer and the type of business they're involved in, some migrate faster to digital, some slower. There's some generational, I think, effects driving that as well. And certainly within the Rexel ecosystem, we have countries that are 75% digital. And then we have countries that are, 15% digital. And North America is kind of solidly in the middle of that. And I think we'll stay there for quite some time. Slowly migrating upwards, but not in a rapid manner. The technology that we are using, we continue to update and continue to upgrade. And certainly the latest versions of it, we talked about ParSpec, but we also use some order entry software that's very AI based, learns our customers, learns our own people, learns our inventory, it's amazing the number of data points that are being dragged in to these AI engines and those algos that really are suggesting, the next best product to use if we're out of one, or boy, customers that buy this often buy this and this, things we're used to seeing with, folks like Amazon. So
Yeah.
it's really becoming much more commonplace, and the power is very impressive, but it takes constant upgrading, constant kind of technology to stay up on it, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's not cheap and it's not easy, but it's very impressive results. So.
And yeah, we know that every distributor is on a different stage of that digital journey, and especially when it comes to AI. But definitely interesting to hear what some of these leading companies like Rexel are doing with it. So very interesting there. Well, this all leads to my bigger question about your strategic vision for Rexel USA. And I know that the company is joined at the hip with the overall European-based Rexel group, but I'm sure that the USA unit has some of its own unique goals and character there. A lot of people like to ask company leaders what their 5-year plan is for the organization, but given the pace of change in distribution and in technology, I feel like that might be too far out. So let's look a little more immediate and at what the next couple of years look like for Rexel in terms of what's on the horizon.
Yeah, certainly, you're not wrong about the 5 years. Seems like a lifetime at the moment, but we do try to have a 3-year plan, and some of the immediate parts of that 3-year plan are obviously continue our M&A here in North America. We do see consolidation in the U.S. specifically still has a lot of opportunity for both core electrical and some adjacencies. We spoke of Tally being a great example of an adjacency. So we do see lots of that on the horizon. I spend a fair bit of time myself in that space. As I mentioned earlier, we have a team that's fully dedicated to M&A, and they'll continue to be busy through the next couple of years for sure. So that'll be key. But also growing our core electrical business. I mentioned Schwing and Warshauer being part of a kind of a shoring up of areas that we're underrepresented in. So we'll continue to do that both in a organic matter as well as M&A. So, we'll open probably close to 20 branches this year. It's mid-year through the year, we're 6 or 7 in right now. I just approved 2 more this week. So we're definitely continuing to open organically open branches in really follow our customer base as they continue to grow, and follow areas that are becoming more and more important in the electrical, because a lot of it because of data centers, or a lot of it because of migration of people moving out of some states into other states are causing some demand. So we'll continue organic growth as well. And then probably the next biggest one that we haven't talked is around services. We see, and I specifically am a big fan of adding services. So not just being a distributor of product, not being a box mover, as the term has been thrown around for a long time. The distributors were just box movers, and we like to add value to everything we do. So those services to add value to the products that we sell. A lot more demand for that. Our biggest customers, our best customers, are asking us to add value, are asking us to do more than just ship them the material. They may want that material in configured in special ways. They may want all that material, mounted in an enclosure and programmed, for that matter. So there's a lot of different things when you talk about advanced services, but we're involved in many of them and continue to look for new ones. So that'll be a big focus in the next couple of years for myself and the organization here in North America. And certainly, last but not least, is the digital platforms that we've talked about. So continue to drive those out, continue to work with our existing partners to make sure we're on the leading edge of what they're doing, but then also look for new partners that may bring us an advantage in the marketplace. So we're doing both of that, and all of that to make sure that our folks are trained and are up to speed on the latest technologies, have at their fingertips the latest information to help our customers and our vendor partners succeed at what they're here to do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
It's a lot to keep an eye on for us on the MDM side. We'll keep watching Rexel. Well, that is all the questions I have for you, Roger. But before we sign off, is there anything that we didn't touch on here that you think our audience of distribution executives and beyond might be interested to know about the company?
No, I think we've covered a lot of what Rexel is all about. We certainly have a global footprint that will continue to evolve. North America will become a more important part of that, which I think is exciting for us here. Long-standing French business, but certainly we're seeing North America as our key market, and we think Canada and the U.S. have a lot of great growth years ahead of them, and we'll continue to invest in these markets. So we're very excited to grow and move, and hopefully move ahead of the market in North America.
Well, Roger, thanks again for joining the MDM podcast.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for listening to the MDM podcast. Like what you just heard, you can find all of our past episodes at mdm.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.